The trauma will never go away, but the tools that I teach, the things that I've learned, the people I've talked to like Ken, you can overcome this. The goal is always to be 1% better every day. And when you're 1% better every day, you can stack those wins. And by stacking those wins, you
Yep.
have more good days than bad. And that's the key. You just want to have more good days than bad.
Welcome to another episode of Threads of Enlightenment. Guys, you know my custom is to welcome our guests because I know for sure that they're coming and spending a couple of very expensive commodity. First, the time. 24 hours has been offered to every man. And Coach Rob is coming here to spend some of that with us. And I want to honor him and thank him for it. The other is the journey that he went through. It afforded him a couple of things. It deposited some things in him. And he's allowing us access to that and becoming vulnerable before us. And so I want to honor him for allowing us access of his wisdom, his knowledge, and his insights. Thank you so much for coming to Threads of Enlightenment.
Thank you, Ken. I really appreciate being here. And I'm a man on a mission, so to speak, to tell my story of how I overcame my mental health issues and my trauma. Uh, and that kind of led me to who I am today as Coach Rob. I'm a 10-year Navy veteran, 17 years former police officer, and I help people turn their pain into progress. And that's my main mission in life. I just want to see people break the stigma on mental health and start to heal.
That's awesome, man. You answered my question. I usually, Coach Rob, I toss this question to everyone because I love to see it. And that is, how do you serve mankind? Because I believe we have two offices as we are moving through our journey, if you will. The first is to get to know who we are, because we really don't know who we are. We've been programmed to believe certain things about ourselves until we go on that journey and uncover that individualist of who we truly are. And the other aspect of the journey, Coach Rob, is I call it the interdependent, where we have the opportunity to serve through, like yourself, podcasts, coaching, all of these different things allow you and I to serve others. One of our customs, and so you answered it, so I'm excited about that. One of my customs that I like to deal with, because I tell everyone, we're all traumatized, man. Every single one of us, the cat, the dog, the bird, everybody's traumatized, because to come into this realm, we came through trauma. I've seen childbirth, I was there. To go into the spiritual realm, we go through trauma. To exit this planet and go to the next realm is death through trauma. So trauma has a yin and yang to it. And the first place that you and I visit while we're here on this planet, while we're on our way to become an adult, is the family. At this unit right here, we're going to hang out here for a couple of years, 18 years plus sometimes. We're going to learn a couple of things, communication skills. We're going to learn about our beliefs. We're going to start forming beliefs right there. We're going to start developing our patterns of behavior, mindsets, all of that, the less than programming, all of those things right there. What was your family unit like, Coach?
Honestly, it wasn't great. I grew up in an era where my dad was a very hard man. He came from that era of you don't talk about your emotional issues. You just kind of stuff it on and go about your business and you do what you have to do to, protect, provide, and preside over your family. Um, Up until recently, now that he's like in his 70s, I never remember even saying he loved me. My dad, like, there was, some verbal abuse there, some emotional abuse there, no physical abuse, thank God. And my dad, for the time and what he knew and what he learned from his parents, I think he did the best he could for what he had. He did instill in me work ethic. He did coach me in soccer for 8 years. He did try to get me to be in sports and be active and do things to help me be successful. But with all the good, there was just as much bad. Like I said, with the no empathy. I remember he used to yell at my mom all the time. When he got mad, he didn't know how to control his emotions, so he'd, throw his hand through a wall or throw something. So that side of the house, it really instilled all that stuff in me. I carried the same things that he did for a very long time because, we watch our parents, we get everything good and bad off of them as we grow up.
Yeah, we are being programmed as we are observing behaviors and stuff like that. And those is, like I said, that's where we learn habits and start learning things. I remember one time, Coach Robert, I had just gotten home from work, had my suit on, and just worried about bills and walking, pacing. My habit was to pace when I get into my zone. And I had my hand in the back of by my back and resting there and just pacing. and I felt this energy behind me, and I turned around, and it was my little boy copying me. It freaked me out. I never did that again in front of him at all because I realized what I was doing. I was training him, I was programming him, sending
Yeah.
out the same energy, and it scared me. So I know exactly this place is of the family, what happens here. What was your communication skills with the others? Because the old ways, if you will, you would describe basically the old ways. And I tell people, we're so lucky the last, our generation, coach, because we were open to personal development and stuff like that, much more so than our parents and stuff like that. You know, that was language that was not even talked about, if you will. But we were so lucky to be able to embark on a journey to learn some of the things, and we saw that they did the best they can. What was your communication skills with those outside of the family, meaning your friends and stuff like that, with that training or that programming that you're receiving home?
Well, I mean, honestly, it wasn't good up until I would say 2018, 2019, because being in the military, they teach you essentially to be a robot, if you will. You're not allowed to have emotions. You're not allowed to be scared. You're not allowed to be tired. You're not allowed to be weak. You just have to do everything that they tell you because when you're in the military, they give you structure, they give you guidance, they give you routine, they give you manuals, they tell you everything of who you are, how you're supposed to be, how you're supposed to act. And then when we get out from the military, we lose that structure overnight. And a lot of people don't realize this when I talk to other veterans or people on my podcast or just in general. You lose everything overnight. You lose your community, you lose your structure, you lose your routine. And that's a very scary place to be in. So I had trauma from the military. And instead of dealing with that trauma, I go and become a police officer. So now I stack more trauma on top of that. So as far as association with my wife at the time, who's now my ex-wife, my kids, it wasn't healthy because once again, I didn't know how to emotionally regulate. I didn't know how to turn things off before I went through that threshold of my house. And so, with my first wife, I was married for 18 years. Obviously, it takes two, and there were some things in our relationship that I wasn't receiving from her. But I put most of the blame as a man and as a father and a husband on me. I was emotionally abusive, just like my father. I would yell and scream. I would throw what I call adult temper tantrums. And it wasn't necessarily that I was mad at her all the time, but once again, I didn't know how to feel. I didn't know how to deal with the trauma that I had faced. I didn't know how to deal with my own self worth. And I took that out on my wife. I took that on my kids and kind of a little worse story, but similar to like you said, I remember one time I was in the house and I'm going off on the wife. I don't even remember, what it's for. And my daughter is standing in front of me. I think she was like 5 or 6 at the time. And she looks up at me and I looked like a monster to her. I feel like the look in her face, the sheer terror in her eyes from me yelling and screaming, I looked like a giant, ginormous monster that was scaring the crud out of her. At that point in my life, even though it was hard and I didn't necessarily change, I was like, I can't do this anymore. I can't yell and scream because it's not helping my kids. So it wasn't until my divorce in 2017, um, I had the luck of meeting another woman pretty quickly in my life who is now my wife. We've been married for a year, but we've been together for 8 years. And I knew when I started a relationship with her, I was like, man, like I can't keep going through this same cycle. I can't repeat this because I'm just going to destroy this relationship as well. But it wasn't even until later than that I completely changed my demeanor, how I act, who I am, and who I was. But yeah, communication was not good for a very long time.
Well, that's one of the things that the military and your family, your dad cut that off, especially with men. They cut that off, communication skills with us and emotion. We can't share those emotions. So those are some of the old ways. And then when you go into the military, it's just much more. And one of the sins of the military is that they never equipped you guys to come back into the quote unquote the regular lifestyle, and they're not equipping the families to make the adjustment emotionally as well, because you guys are constantly and an emotional adrenaline and all that stuff. It's a high. You are on the air all the time. And because you have to be, especially when you're in the theater and all the different places that you guys are visiting where it's normal in the military. But when you come out from there and you come into the natural realm, if you will, nobody's telling you guys that process of coming down emotionally, chemically, and all that other stuff. And no one is making the family aware that you have to make that chemical adjustment. And so this communication, even at that level, it's a sin of our government not to even educate us as a group so that we can make that transition, you guys, and we can be aware of you and what needs you have and be able to walk with you, if you will. And it's a horrible sin, man. When you're looking towards college and military, that crossroad there, coach, talk to me as to why did you pick the military versus going to college? Because some people, again, those two crossroads we have and the programs that we have out there is one of those roads, you know? And what was your reasoning, if you will, for the military side?
So I like to call the military sometimes the Lost Boys Club, right? So when I was in my 20s, I didn't have a purpose. I didn't have goals. I didn't have a vision. If I could have, I would have stayed at my parents' house, living off of them, mooching off of them until God knows when. So I actually was a very gifted athlete. I ran cross country and track, and most of high school was very good, was ranked pretty high up in the state. And I took a year off from school, and my dad, trying to talk me back into college. I actually did go to college. I went to Cal Baptist University in California. My first mission or purpose in life, I thought I was going to be a youth pastor. I was spending a lot of time in my local church, running youth groups, playing the drums in the church band, giving sermons on Sunday, like whatever I could do in the church. And my parents, which was funny, they didn't like that. They thought the church was using me because I wasn't getting paid at the time. I was just doing this of my free will with the hopes of getting like on the job training to become a youth pastor. So I go to California Baptist University on a scholarship. I actually had scholarships even though I took a year off because I was that good. And because at the time, whatever God had another purpose or the universe, I lost my scholarships. I went to college. You were supposed to practice with the team, but because I had an ego, the rule was because I was out of college for a year, they gave me the scholarship. I had to practice with the team, but I wasn't allowed to compete. And because I wasn't allowed to compete, that made me very angry and upset. So I lost my scholarship. I got kicked out academically for not, getting the good grades. At that point, my dad wasn't going to pay for college. And I went back into that I'm not going to do anything with my life mode. And my dad was in the Navy for 3 years. So literally every morning, my dad was a business owner. He would like literally kick open my door. I think the door was broken by the time I decided to join the Navy. And he'd say, go join the Navy. And he did that for 6 months, religiously for 6 months. So I actually joined the Navy to piss off my dad, but it didn't
Yeah.
work, right? Because as soon as I got into the military, I had a huge wake up call. And for all the trauma and everything I dealt with and everything I faced in the Navy, this is essentially the push that I needed to learn how to become independent, learn how to be a man, learn how to, I guess, have some sort of purpose or goals to do something bigger than myself.
So here you are, man, after dad encouragement for 6 months to move you from your nest, as they say, as the eagle is kicking the kid out and hoping that he flies. One of those type of scenarios. And you got into the military, and we know what the military. I don't know personally, but you know personally what they do to a young man once he arrives, and how they strip him down and emotionally, and then rebuild him how they want him to be built. As
Mhm.
you were there, and again, here's this guy that wasn't sure what he wanted to do and not motivated enough. You got there and they were doing all of this reprogramming, because that's basically what it is, coach. How are you handling yourself at that time with all this newness of the reprogramming, the demands that they are making? How was Rob doing in that space?
Interesting enough, as far as boot camp, um, it didn't go too bad. I mean, I remember it being hard. Like you said, I remember the reprogramming, the waking you up at 5 a.m. to go exercise, the marching, like everything that comes along with boot camp. I was good in that aspect. It's when I got to my first command, um, that was the wake up call. That was the, oh crap, what happens now? Because when you go into the military, when you go to a recruiter, when I went to the recruiter in California, I didn't know anybody that went in the military. I didn't have any friends or family or anybody in the area to guide me. And I guess one of the things I'd like to say, if you're ever thinking about going into the military, talk to someone that's been there first. Don't go it alone, because I don't know if it's changed, but most of the time the recruiters, they just want to throw you into whatever. They don't care about you. They don't care about what you want to do, who you want to be. So talk to people that have been there so they can guide you in the right direction. Because when I went to my recruiter, he's like, "Oh, just go in the Navy and when you get there, they'll give you a job." And it doesn't work like that. When you go to your recruiter, you have to pick your job and then you go into the military. And then after boot camp, then you go to your training to do that job. And if you don't have a job in the Navy, you become pretty much the janitor, the custodian, the person that has to clean the pubes out of the shower, the person that has to paint the ship, the person that basically is treated like the worst of the worst. And so when I got to my first command, which was a ship in Jacksonville, Florida, the ship at the time, they didn't have females integrated with males. It was just a male force on the ship. And I tell everybody and they don't believe me, but it's true. It was like being in prison. I get there. As soon as I get on the ship, they tell me they don't want me there. I get pulled out in the middle of the night out of my bed and get the crap beat out of me. People are threatening to kill me. People are treating me like garbage, like I'm less than a human being. And that's where most of my trauma comes from. And I remember calling my dad from a payphone on the pier, and I'm crying. I'm 21 years old, crying. I'm supposed to be a man, right? And I'm like, Dad, I want to come home. I can't do this. And the greatest thing he could have ever done for me was, and as hard and tough as it is, but with the nature of who he is, he says, "Son, I love you, but you can't come home." Click. And he hung up the phone on me. And so now I'm standing there in a real time, real world situation. Like, what do I do? Do I go AWOL and just say, screw it, I'm going home? Do I suck it up? Do I try to? So at that point, I had to decide, I guess, to become a man. I had to decide to become an adult. And that's where I started like getting into fitness. I started lifting weights. I started kind of fighting back. If people would say something mean to them, I would say something mean back. If someone pushed me, I push them back. Like I wasn't going to let anybody take my joy and destroy who I was as a person. So boot camp was great. The first command is what essentially made me, I would say, into a man, so to speak, and not in a very pleasant or good way.
Let me ask you a question. You may be able to answer this. What is the purpose of that? Because there you are, you've done your stuff, you've been through the program as far as your training, and you're here. You're just trying to get acclimated. This is new. I can get, I could figure out some of the pranks and that kind of foolishness, which, people would do, the new kid on the block, you know what I'm saying? But not when you're going to take it to that level to create now to damage a human being who is going to be a part of your team. I don't understand. Can you get a sense of why they did something like that? Because it doesn't make any sense because you did what you did. And I guess I can understand the pranking and stuff, doing stuff, but not to the point where you're being traumatized to the degree that you're talking about. And this is, I'm sure, you talking about this story, this must have been a common practice.
I think, and I'm going to venture to say in most branches, and I hope to God, I don't think it's to this extreme anymore. But during the time that I went in like 97, they called it hazing. There was still so much stuff going on in the military that people didn't speak about because there was a real fear that if you said, "Hey, I'm going to tell on you," they would literally say, "I'm going to kill you," or literally say like, "You're not going to leave this ship," or the threats were real. Like, and I just, once again, I think it goes into part of everything that I'm currently trying to reverse engineer or fight for as it comes with veterans and first responders who have mental health issues or deal with trauma, even to try to fight to maybe get some better programs and things going in the military sector, because it's kind of like you said at the beginning with the whole, you're programmed to be one way. You're programmed to be this killer, this tough person, this soldier, sailor, airman, whatever you are. But a lot of people from the military, especially males, they either had to go to jail or go to the military. They had a broken home or they went to the military. Like most males, I guess, in my opinion, I would say at least a strong 50%, they don't go in the military because they're saying, hey, this is the career choice that I want to do. No, something bad happened to them that forced them to run to the military. And then they get there with that trauma, and once again, the military is not apt, just like police departments, fire departments, they're not apt to help people deal with their trauma and their mental health issues. And, you know, you see a psychologist and there's mental health tests and there's different things before you go in the military, but those are easy to lie or to say what is necessary so you can get in. I mean, it's not that hard. So I think, you know, for me at the time, I was dealing with a bunch of men who didn't want to be there. You know, they're miserable. And that's part of the work life balance, too, right? If your command as a military person or your police department or your fire department, they're making your life miserable because there's not a happy work life balance there, you're going to carry that home. You know, I talk to military members all the time and I ask them, I've said, do you remember a time where one of your supervisors made you work extra hard and extra long before because they didn't want to go home? And most of them always say yes, because you always had that guy that, like, I hate my wife, I hate my kids, I hate my life. So guess what? We're working an extra 5 hours today. And that was never the right answer. So
So here you are, man, being traumatized all over the place. You left there and then you came as a police officer, another industry of trauma, and you're constantly surrounded by trauma. And this man, this young man, had to begin to, the route that they tell us that we got to get physical now. This is how we're going to deal with all of the trauma and whoever's coming our way. As we are moving through that life and you're in the police arena now, and the trauma is with those guys and the public, because you got the crazies in the public that you're dealing with too. Talk to me, Rob. How was that? This is a cauldron of, what were you doing, man? How was adjusting to this transition? Because I said that's a painful, some stages that you're walking through. It's just pain, 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 and stuff like that. How are you handling you? Because you said you started to work on becoming a man. How was this young man in your mind, Rob, going back 2020? How was he doing, forming his development, if you will?
it didn't happen until I want to say maybe a year total now. So for gosh, as long as I can remember, I was not okay and I was never okay. And once again, like I said, when I got with this new person, this new relationship, this is where I really was like, man, I really love this woman. My ex-wife used to say, I can't help you. My current wife always says, how can I help you? And regardless if she can help me or not, that's a huge difference right there. Words have meaning, right? How can I help you? So having her support was very important. And I didn't want to destroy that. In 2018, I was a police officer in federal and state. And in 2018, I was working at a Veterans Affairs hospital. So I'm dealing with veterans, right? I have trauma. I'm dealing with veterans who have trauma. And then I'm dealing with my coworkers who were miserable. They didn't want to be there. The hospital is a very negative place. And I'm like, man, I can't do this. And my mother had just passed a little bit before that. And I remember they were trying to not give me bereavement leave to go put my mother to rest. I'm like, what a horrible thing. So I quit the police force. I opened a strength and conditioning gym and I ran that for 4 years. And, you know, fitness, I tell people it saved my life. It got me out of some very dark times. It's the first pillar of my coaching, but I lost it due to COVID. I lost my entire business, my entire brand, my entire identity due to COVID, which gave me more trauma. And for like 6 months, I didn't do much. I was very depressed and frustrated. And my wife, trying to be supportive, she's like, well, why don't you go back into law enforcement? Well, that obviously was not the right answer. So I get state certified here in Florida and I get a job as a police officer. And I was literally only there for 4 months. The second day on the job, I saw a young man commit suicide. And because I was the rookie, I had to take the gun out of his hand. I had to process the crime scene. I had to deal with seeing this young man, body, spirit, and soul, not in his body anymore. And that gave me the questions because he was a younger black man. He was a security guard. And I'm like, why would this guy do that? Like, I just kept pondering, like, why would this guy take his life? And as someone who's been there, who has thought about suicide, that was a very scary, but yet prominent thing for me. So as I went through the months of working at this police department and being in another place where, like you said, I'm dealing with the worst of the worst people. I'm not arresting good guys. I'm arresting bad guys, right?
Yeah.
I'm dealing with the drunks, the drug addicts, the child molesters, the worst of the worst. And the police department, even though they hired me, they acted like they didn't want me there. They treated me like I was just worthless to them, which that's not a good work environment as it is if you want to stay somewhere. And I remember going home and, the wife obviously can tell whenever something's wrong with me. And I just broke down and I'm like, I can't do this. And it was a place of despair because, my wife's a teacher. She doesn't make that much money. And as a police officer, you do get paid very well, especially in the state of Florida. And here I am as a man, I'm like telling her, like, mentally, I can't do this, which means I can't support you. I can't help you pay the bills. I can't. But she knew that something had to give, right? She gave me the go ahead to quit. That next day I went and talked to my sergeant. I was like, look, I thank you for the opportunity, but I can't do this. I sat there in depression again because I'm like, now, I'm 47 at the time. I have nothing now, no job, no purpose. Like, I don't know what I'm going to do. And I remember scrolling, I think I was scrolling on Instagram. I was scrolling on some social media and I saw a post, and the person in the post was like, if you don't know what to do, just practice gratitude. And I'm
Yeah.
like thinking to myself, like, really? Like, this is the dumbest thing I've ever heard in my life, right? Practice gratitude. But I'm like, okay. So I went to bed, and that night I kind of meditated or sat in silence and thought about it. And I picked three things that I was thankful for. Then I did that the next night. Then I did that the next night. Every night when I go to bed, I think of three things that I'm thankful for. And then every morning I try to remember to wake up. And before my feet touch the ground, I say, today's going to be a good day. Now, initially with the mental health issues and the trauma, some days I had to say it's going to be a good day 5,000 times.
Yeah.
But those two things alone substantially changed my mindset, substantially helped me to start rewiring my brain, substantially helped me to sit there and say, you know what? My life's not that bad. And then with the Battle Harder podcast, my podcast, the people that were telling their stories, I have some people that went through some real world stuff, like a veteran who had cancer and didn't get the right diagnosis from his doctors and thought he was going to die and said, "No, I'm going to go run an Ironman while I have cancer," and then healed from that cancer. So people who have lost so much and they, for whatever reason, they decided not to give up. And I'm like, why am I complaining about my life? Why am I upset and frustrated and angry because someone cut me off or because someone got my order wrong at McDonald's or I lost my wallet? So I started to learn, what am I going to put my energy in to? Am I going to put my energy into the stuff that doesn't matter, getting stuck in traffic or being late somewhere for 5 minutes? Or am I going to put my energy into good, into helping people, into trying to change people's lives, into making myself the best version that I can be? And that's where the shift happened.
Guys, Rob, what a powerful journey. What a powerful
Thank you.
story. And I want you guys to go back and listen again to what Coach Rob said, because many of you are in that dark spaces and he gave
Mm.
you one of the most powerful roadmaps in this universe and in probably any other universe as to how to begin to reprogram your mind. Gratitude is one of the most powerful forces out there. Love and kindness, forgiveness. These are some of the most powerful things out there that will help you to reprogram you and help you to walk through your pain. And gratitude, man, I do the same thing, coach. I do the very same thing in my life. Before my feet hit the ground, and all these type stuff. I am, I live a life of gratitude all through the day. I look
Mm.
at my house and I'm just tell God how grateful I am for what I have in my house, and I'm thanking Him. And that mindset, as Coach is talking about, will begin to shift you from those dark spaces because that's what it's designed for. And you have psychologists talk about it where it says that you start tapping into the quantum realm and all those different places where the subconscious being resides. And the Bible will refer to that quantum realm as heavenly places. So same language, same location, different language. But guys, go back and listen to what Coach talked about. So here you are, Coach. You began to notice the change as you began to practice gratitude and seeing the manifestation in your life. And now it also opens us to begin to think outside of the box, if you will. As this is happening to you, coach, and you're beginning to think outside of the box, looking at you in that state, what did you begin to notice that propelled you to come to the space where you're going to start these podcasts and all these different things? And guys, we're going to provide you Coach Rob's information so you can get to him, get into his podcast, listen to it. He's a coach, he's a counselor. Come on, man, get in there. If he can do it, you can do it
Mm.
because we are just normal people just like you. And he's telling us his pain and allowing us access so to see how he came out. Talk to us as you're experiencing gratitude, the changes that it begins to make happen in you, and how did you adapt those changes to now create that new world that you wanted to create?
Definitely. So I want to preface before I get into that one, my trauma didn't go away, okay? I still have some bad days once in a while. As a person with PTSD, major depressive disorder, anxiety, social anxiety, which is a lot, it didn't go away and the trauma will never go away. But the tools that I teach, the things that I've learned, the people I've talked to, like Ken, you can overcome this stuff. You can have the goal is always to be 1% better every day. And when you're 1% better every day, you can stack those wins. And by stacking those wins, you have more good days than bad. And that's the key. You just want to have more good days than bad. Life is life. You can't always have perfect days. You can't always have good days. Sometimes you may revert back to that anxiety or that PTSD or whatever. But the things I tell you and Ken tells you, and the things with gratitude and having some sort of personal mantra that helps you get through the bad times and the journaling and the just being positive, trying to be more positive than negative. This is coming from someone that I was always in the black. I was always life sucks, life's horrible, everything stinks. And what's funny, people that have a bad life or bad days, they're always, questioning God or the universe. Why me? Why me? Why me?
Hmm.
But on the same side of the fence, if you start operating on the positive side of the house and saying, I love my life, thank you for being able to breathe. I get to move today. I can go to the gym today. I have free will. If you live in the US, I live in the United States. Like whatever you can grasp onto that makes you feel good and worthy of being here, you're not going to be like, God, why me? Or universe, why me? You're going to be like, God, thank you. Universe, thank you. So the mindset, what's crazy is the simplest things in life is what works. So when you're going down this rabbit hole of how do I be better, you don't have to overcomplicate it. Just look for the simplest things in our brain. It's a computer essentially. It's a supercomputer. If you can reprogram a computer, if you can rebuild an engine, you can rebuild your brain. Your brain is a tool that you can form into whatever you want it to be, but you have to have what I tell everybody all the time, you have to have a limitless belief system. You can't have a limiting belief system. Those limiting beliefs is what keeps the trauma there, it keeps the anxiety there, it keeps the depression there. Because when we think negative and our brain has that chemical reaction, like, okay, Coach Rob is negative again, that's what puts in those thoughts. Am I good enough? Does my wife love me? Do my kids care about
Yeah.
me? And so you have to rewire your brain. So what happened with me is part of owning the gym is where I really leaned into coaching. And when I lost the gym, even up to a couple of days ago, I see my community out in town. And the first thing they always say to me is like, Coach Rob, when are you going to open another gym? And I used to get angry and frustrated with that because I'm like, I lost my gym, I lost my business. But the beautiful thing after that, they always said, we never met a coach like you. We never met a person like you. We never met someone that led us like you, someone that talked to us like you. So I think that was God or the universe saying, okay, you fixed yourself. You found out what worked. Now I need you to do that for everybody else. And I've always had a service. I mean, I was in the military. I served my country. I was a police officer. I served my community, I served my veterans. I worked in the church. I've always had a service mindset. I've always been called to help people.
Yeah.
And because of that service mindset and because of the fact that in my heart and soul, I am a business owner, I'm an entrepreneur, combining my using my gift of and obviously what I do doesn't work for everybody and obviously I always tell everybody I am an extension of mental health. I'm not to overtake mental health. I'm not to overtake therapies from doctors, psychiatrists, medication if that's what works for you. I'm just another option or an addition to what you're already getting help with. And for me, if I have a first responder or a veteran or someone that's faced great trauma, the difference is most of the time you can talk to a psychiatrist and they've never faced any trauma or they're not going to talk about it because they're a professional doctor. Most of their dealings in the mental health realm is what they learned in school. But if you come to Coach Rob and you talk to me, I have no problem telling you the abuse that I faced in my childhood, the abuse that I faced in the military, the abuse that I faced in my first marriage, how how I wasn't able to turn things off as a police officer when I walked through that door and I took it out on my family. And then I'm going to give you the tools to hopefully help you overcome with that. And that starts with my three pillars. Fitness is paramount. I look at how you move, what you put in your body, if you do any form of activity, if you have any injuries, because when we start to take a priority over our bodies, over our fitness, over our activity, over having muscle or strength or whatever, that starts to build resilience because fitness isn't easy. Being in shape isn't easy.
Hmm.
Working out isn't easy. Eating healthy isn't easy. So if I can change your mindset there, that's already starting to put the resilience in you. That's already starting to put the endurance in you. And if we look good, we feel good, right?
Yeah.
Then I hit you with the mindset. That's the journaling, the practicing gratitude, changing our belief systems. And then I hit you with the discipline because motivation is BS and you have to have discipline. So consistency equals discipline, discipline equals progress. And that allows you to continue on this beautiful path of life without Coach Rob.
Yeah, the thing that Jesus said is go into the world and make disciples. Disciples is where we have to live. And I love how Coach put that out there, guys. You see, he went through those guys that went through and got the degree. They just went through the theory part of the school. School has, because when I studied in electrical engineer, we went through the theory and then we had to go in the lab. Life
Right. Practical
is the
application.
lab. And so Coach Rob went through the lab. And a lot of those guys that went through the theory, they have no connection to the lab and they just don't know what they're talking about. And so they will keep you there spinning in years and years and years and have no progress. But when you go to someone who's really been through the lab, may not get quote unquote the theory, but understands the theory because the lab is the theory. And so
Mm.
when you're coming from that space, if you will, you're able to receive much more and there will be progress because that person is speaking from experience, understands those principles that you need, as he talked about those theories, those three pillars that a coach is talking about to help you assist you, move you through, man. And that's what it is. And so he mentioned a bunch of tools, journaling, meditation, all of these different tools. Those are tools that you can use to help you to reprogram your mind. And as you begin to reprogram your mind, you will change your life. What are you doing with your mind? Your mind, a part of your mindset is your thoughts. Once you reprogram there, because that's the initial state where everything begins. Depression starts there. Everything starts there. all the negativity starts with your thoughts. So now when your thoughts come and you attach a feeling to that thought, you're hooked. And so what their coach is talking to you about is learning how to take control of those thoughts. And you're going to learn how to adapt new emotions and tag it. And once you tag that thing, it will manifest. I'm telling you, it'll manifest because it'll push you
Definitely.
through those dark times. And coach says, we all here, we're traumatized, and this life is uncovering those traumas as we continue. There's so much more in us. And as we grow and learn, that is called personal development. And none of us are
Mm,
there 100%. I don't think we'll ever get
mm.
there. But guys, I have someone that you're listening to on this podcast. And Coach Rom has made himself available to us. So again, he has a podcast there. Coach, I'll let you talk to them about that in a little while. And you also have your coaching piece that you have your one-on-one. You have also your speaking engagement, all of these different
Mhm.
programs that you have for them, because our goal is those that are listening to us will have access to coach, because both coach and I want you to have access to us because we know from what we are what you are capable of. Coach, talk to them about your process, which you mentioned within the coaching arena, and talk to them about your podcast. I want to know, how did that came about? What was the process that brought that out? Because again, you were having glimpse of people saying, "Hey, when you were coaching, you were different," and the podcast is just another way by which you are serving, because you are a servant, as you stated. How did that process come about, and how did you solidify that and your position and your office as a coach? How did those things come together from this man that has been through so much all of his life, starting from when he was a young boy all the way to the Marines, to a police officer, to a coach?
Thank you. Yeah, so what's funny is when I first started getting on social media, where Instagram is my most prevalent platform right now, every post I did, it was for me. So even when I started my podcast and I would essentially rant and rave about something that upset me in the mindset field or mental health field or being better, because I'm all about being the best version of yourself, it was therapy for me, right? And I was like, one of my best friends, he's like, I understand you're trying to build this business and this brand and everything, but when you speak, you're not speaking to an audience. It seems like it's more for you. And I told him, I'm like, yeah, it is. It's my therapy. Like, this helps me. I can go back and watch a video of something I said, and this will help me, give me another tool to overcome that mental health issue or not wanting to work out or whatever I was going through at the time. And then, taking his advice and realizing that this is what God or the universe, but I'll say God in my life, this is what God wants me to do. He wants to use me as a mouthpiece, not from the religious standpoint, but he wants me to help people heal. And I truly believe that this is my mission. This is what I was finally put on earth to do. And it took I think sometimes, even with the trauma and the bad things, we get hung up on, once again, the why me, why is this happening, why am I going through this, and then there comes the blame on the universe or God. Why am I cursed? Why am I tortured? Why am I meant to suffer? But sometimes we're meant to suffer so we can help people heal. If I've never suffered, if I've never gone through pain, if I've never gone through loss, how am I going to help someone deal with that, right? So that's essentially where the coaching came from. And then as I grew as a business owner, I started talking more to my audience, to my public, to the people I want to help, to the people I want to heal. And it's real simple. Anybody can find me at battlefittedbrand.com. That's my website. And there it has all my resources. So I have where you can book me to be a keynote speaker. You can book a free consultation with me to have a conversation about coaching. You can go to the Battle Heart podcast, which is on iHeartRadio, YouTube, and Apple Podcasts. And that's where everybody can connect with me. But I'm literally on all social medias at BattleFitted. And once again, Instagram is my highest platform. Anybody can DM me. Now, here's the thing, though. I'm going to tell you this: anybody has full access to me, and I'm willing to talk to and help anybody. The caveat is, I can't help you if you don't want to help yourself. I can't help you if you don't want to change. The first step, and I know people get like worked up and scared on this, like, oh my God, I got to talk to the coach and he's going to sell me this and sell me that. No, everything I do, I lead from the heart. I speak from the heart. When I meet with a client over Zoom, all it's about is hearing their issues, their problems, what they want to overcome. And then after I, do some active listening and make sure I hear you, so I know exactly what it is you need help with, then we're going to work together on a game plan. While I have to make money doing this because this is my life and this is how I support my family, it's never about Coach Rob. It's never about how much money I can get out of you. It's never about anything other than helping you heal and heal from within.
Guys, this is what it's all about. This is why we do what we do. And you could see Coach Rob's heart. And so we are going to provide everything again for you guys to get to him, have access to him so that you can get into that space where our goal and our desire is to move you through from where you're at to where you ought to be, because that's where you need to be for you and for your family. Coach Rob, I just want to thank you so much, man, for coming to Threads of Enlightenment and allowing us the opportunity to learn and get into your space and to see what you are called to do here on this planet as your assignment that God has given to you. Thank you so much for offering us those insights and the opportunity to chat with you.
Thank you. I appreciate being here, and I love the title of your podcast. That's a great title.
Thank you so much, sir. You have a good one. Coach, we're going to get in touch with you and give you all the things you need to when it goes live and stuff like that. So I appreciate it.
Sounds good.
All right.
Well, thanks for having me, Ken. I appreciate the conversation.
It's an honor, man. Again, it's an honor.
Thanks for tuning in to Threads of Enlightenment with Ken Primus. Hopefully you're now feeling more empowered to overcome the challenges in your life, whatever they may be. Share that inspiration with others by telling them about this podcast, rating it, and of course, remember to subscribe so you don't miss a single episode. For more connection, you can find us on Facebook and Instagram by searching for Threads of Enlightenment. Until next time, stay enlightened.